Is Gandhi a hero? This is what we will see today. Part 2. In 1934, Gandhi resigned from Congress Party membership. He did not disagree with the party's position but felt that if he resigned, his popularity with Indians would cease to stifle the party's membership, which actually varied, including communists, socialists, trade unionists, students, religious conservatives, and those with pro-business convictions, and that these various voices would get a chance to make themselves heard. Gandhi also wanted to avoid being a target for Raj propaganda by leading a party that had temporarily accepted political accommodation with the Raj. Gandhi returned to active politics again in 1936 with the Nehru presidency and the Lucknow session of the Congress. Although Gandhi wanted a total focus on the task of winning independence and not speculation about India's future, he did not restrain the Congress from adopting socialism as its goal. Gandhi had a clash with Subhas Chandra Bose, who had been elected president in 1938 and who had previously expressed a lack of faith in nonviolence as a means of protest. Despite Gandhi's opposition, Bose won a second term as Congress president against Gandhi's nominee, Dr. Pattabhi Sitaramaiah, but left the Congress when the All India leaders resigned en masse in protest of his abandonment of the principles introduced by Gandhi. Gandhi declared that Sitaramaiah's defeat was his defeat. Gandhi opposed providing any help to the British war effort, and he campaigned against any Indian participation in World War II. The British government responded with the arrests of Gandhi and many other Congress leaders and killed over 1,000 Indians who participated in this movement. A number of violent attacks were also carried out by the nationalists against the British government, while Gandhi's campaign did not enjoy the support of a number of Indian leaders, such as Sardar Patel and Rajendra Prasad. And over 2.5 million Indians volunteered and joined the British military to fight on various fronts of the Allied forces. The movement played a role in weakening the control over the South Asian region by the British regime, and it ultimately paved the way for Indian independence. Gandhi's opposition to the Indian participation in World War II was motivated by his belief that India could not be party to a war ostensibly being fought for democratic freedom while that freedom was denied to India itself. He also condemned Nazism and fascism, a view which won endorsement of other Indian leaders. As the war progressed, Gandhi intensified his demand for independence, calling for the British to quit India in a 1942 speech in Mumbai. This was Gandhi's and the Congress Party's most definitive revolt aimed at securing the British exit from India. The British government responded quickly to the Quit India speech, and within hours after Gandhi's speech arrested Gandhi and all the members of the Congress Working Committee. His countrymen retaliated the arrests by damaging or burning down hundreds of government-owned railway stations, police stations, and cutting down telegraph wires. In 1942, Gandhi, now nearing age 73, urged his people to completely stop cooperating with the imperial government. In this effort, he urged that they neither kill nor injure British people, but be willing to suffer and die if violence is initiated by the British officials. He clarified that the movement would not be stopped because of any individual acts of violence, saying that the ordered anarchy of the present system of administration was worse than real anarchy. He urged Indians to carry a marrow in the cause of their rights and freedoms. Gandhi's arrest lasted 2 years, as he was held in the Aga Khan Palace in Pune. During this period, his longtime secretary Mahadev Desai died of a heart attack. His wife Kasturba died after 18 months' imprisonment on the 22nd of February 1944, and Gandhi suffered a severe malaria attack. While in jail, he agreed to an interview with Stuart Gelder, a British journalist. Gelder then composed and released an interview summary, cabled it to the mainstream press, that announced sudden concessions Gandhi was willing to make. Comments that shocked his countrymen, the Congress workers, and even Gandhi. The latter two claimed that it distorted what Gandhi actually said on a range of topics and falsely repudiated the Quit India movement. Gandhi was released before the end of the war on the 6th of May 1944 because of his failing health and necessary surgery. The Raj did not want him to die in prison and enraged the nation. He came out of detention to an altered political scene. The Muslim League, for example, which a few years earlier had appeared marginal, now occupied the center of the political stage. And the topic of Muhammad Ali Jinnah's campaign for Pakistan was a major talking point. Gandhi and Jinnah had extensive correspondence, and the two men met several times over a period of 2 weeks in September 1944 at Jinnah's house in Bombay, where Gandhi insisted on a united, religiously plural and independent India which included Muslims and non-Muslims of the Indian subcontinent coexisting. Jinnah rejected this proposal and insisted instead for partitioning the subcontinent on religious lines to create a separate Muslim India. These discussions continued through 1947. While the leaders of Congress languished in jail, the other parties supported the war and gained organizational strength. underground publications flailed at the ruthless suppression of Congress, but it had little control over events. At the end of the war, the British gave clear indications that power would be transferred to Indian hands. At this point, Gandhi called off the struggle, and around 100,000 political prisoners were released, including the Congress's leadership. Gandhi opposed the partition of the Indian subcontinent along religious lines. The Indian National Congress and Gandhi called for the British to quit India. However, the Muslim League demanded divide and quit India. Gandhi suggested an agreement which required the Congress and the Muslim League to cooperate and attain independence under a provisional government. Thereafter, the question of partition could be resolved by a plebiscite in the districts with a Muslim majority. Jinnah rejected Gandhi's proposal and called for Direct Action Day, on the 16th of August 1946, to press Muslims to publicly gather in cities and support his proposal for the partition of the Indian subcontinent into a Muslim state and non-Muslim state. Hussain Shahid Suhrawardy, the Muslim League Chief Minister of Bengal, now Bangladesh and West Bengal, gave Calcutta's police special holiday to celebrate the Direct Action Day. The Direct Action Day triggered a mass murder of Calcutta Hindus and the torching of their property, and holidaying police were missing to contain or stop the conflict. The British government did not order its army to move in to contain the violence. The violence on Direct Action Day led to retaliatory violence against Muslims across India. Thousands of Hindus and Muslims were murdered, and tens of thousands were injured in the cycle of violence in the days that followed. Gandhi visited the most riot-prone areas to appeal a stop to the massacres. Archibald Wavell, the Viceroy and Governor-General of British India for 3 years through February 1947, had worked with Gandhi and Jinnah to find a common ground. Before and after accepting Indian independence in principle, Wavell condemned Gandhi's character and motives as well as his ideas. Wavell accused Gandhi of harboring the single-minded idea to overthrow British rule and influence and to establish a Hindu Raj, and called Gandhi a malignant, malevolent, exceedingly shrewd politician. Wavell feared a civil war on the Indian subcontinent, and doubted Gandhi would be able to stop it. The British reluctantly agreed to grant independence to the people of the Indian subcontinent, but accepted Jinnah's proposal of partitioning the land into Pakistan and India. Gandhi was involved in the final negotiations, but Stanley Walpert states the plan to carve up British India was never approved of or accepted by Gandhi. The partition was controversial and violently disputed. More than 500,000 were killed in religious riots as 10 million to 12 million non-Muslims migrated from Pakistan into India, and Muslims migrated from India into Pakistan. Across the newly created borders of India, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, Gandhi spent the Day of Independence not celebrating the end of the British rule but appealing for peace among his countrymen by fasting and spinning in Calcutta on the 15th of August 1947. The partition had gripped the Indian subcontinent with religious violence and the streets were filled with corpses. Some writers credit Gandhi's fasting and protests for stopping the religious riots and communal violence. At 5:17 p.m. on the 30th of January 1948, Gandhi was with his grandnieces in the garden of Birla House on his way to address a prayer meeting, when Nathuram Godse, a Hindu nationalist, fired 3 bullets into his chest from a pistol at close range. According to some accounts, Gandhi died instantly. In other accounts, such as one prepared by an eyewitness journalist, Gandhi was carried into the Birla House, into a bedroom. There he died about 30 minutes later as one of Gandhi's family members read verses from Hindu scriptures. Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru addressed his countrymen over the All India radio saying, "Friends and comrades, the light has gone out of our lives, and there is darkness everywhere, and I do not quite know what to tell you or how to say it. Our beloved leader, Bapu as we called him, the father of the nation, is no more. Perhaps I am wrong to say that. Nevertheless, we will not see him again, as we have seen him for these many years. We will not run to him for advice or seek solace from him, and that is a terrible blow, not only for me, but for millions and millions in this country." Godse, a Hindu nationalist with links to the extremist Hindu Mahasabha and the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, made no attempt to escape. Several other conspirators were soon arrested as well. They were tried in court at Delhi's Red Fort. At his trial, Godse did not deny the charges nor express any remorse. According to Claude Markovitz, a French historian noted for his studies of colonial India, Godse stated that he killed Gandhi because of his complacence towards Muslims, holding Gandhi responsible for the frenzy of violence and sufferings during the subcontinent's partition into Pakistan and India. Godse accused Gandhi of subjectivism and of acting as if only he had a monopoly of the truth. Godse was found guilty and executed in 1949. Gandhi's death was mourned nationwide. Over 1 million people joined the 5-mile-long funeral procession that took over 5 hours to reach Raj Ghat from Birla House, where he was assassinated, and another million watched the procession pass by. Gandhi's body was transported on a weapons carrier, whose chassis was dismantled overnight to allow a high floor to be installed so that people could catch a glimpse of his body. The engine of the vehicle was not used. Instead, 4 drag ropes held by 50 people each pulled the vehicle. All Indian-owned establishments in London remained closed in mourning as thousands of people from all faiths and denominations and Indians from all over Britain converged at India House in London. Gandhi's assassination dramatically changed the political landscape. Nehru became his political heir. According to Markovits, while Gandhi was alive, Pakistan's declaration that it was a Muslim state had led Indian groups to demand that it be declared a Hindu state. Nehru used Gandhi's martyrdom as a political weapon to silence all advocates of Hindu nationalism as well as his political challengers. He linked Gandhi's assassination to politics of hatred and ill will. According to Guha, Nehru and his Congress colleagues called on Indians to honor Gandhi's memory and even more his ideals. Nehru used the assassination to consolidate the authority of the new Indian state. Gandhi's death helped marshal support for the new government and legitimize the Congress Party's control, leveraged by the massive outpouring of Hindu expressions of grief for a man who had inspired them for decades. The government suppressed the RSS, the Muslim National Guards, and the Coxars, with some 200,000 arrests. For years after the assassination, states Markovits, Gandhi's shadow loomed large over the political life of the new Indian Republic. The government quelled any opposition to its economic and social policies, despite these being contrary to Gandhi's ideas. By reconstructing Gandhi's image and ideals, Gandhi was cremated in accordance with Hindu tradition. Gandhi's ashes were poured into urns which were sent across India for memorial services. Most of the ashes were immersed at the Sangam at Allahabad on the 12th of February 1948, but some were secretly taken away. In 1997, Tushar Gandhi immersed the contents of one urn, found in a bank vault and reclaimed through the courts, at the Sangam at Allahabad. Some of Gandhi's ashes were scattered at the source of the Nile River near Jinnah, Uganda, and a memorial plaque marks the event. On the 30th of January 2008, the contents of another urn were immersed at Gurgaon Chowpatty. Another urn is at the palace of the Aga Khan in Pune where Gandhi was held as a political prisoner from 1942 to 1944, and another in the Self-Realization Fellowship Lake Shrine in Los Angeles. The Birla House site where Gandhi was assassinated is now a memorial called Gandhi Smriti. The place near Yamuna River where he was cremated is the Raj Ghat Memorial in New Delhi. A black marble platform, it bears the epigraph Rama. These are widely believed to be Gandhi's last words after he was shot, though the veracity of this statement has been questioned. Gandhi's statements, letters, and life have attracted much political and scholarly analysis of his principles, practices, and beliefs, including what influenced him. Some writers present him as a paragon of ethical living and pacifism, while others present him as a more complex, contradictory, and evolving character influenced by his culture and circumstances. Gandhi grew up in a Hindu and Jain religious atmosphere in his native Gujarat, which were his primary influences, but he was also influenced by his personal reflections and literature of Hindu bhakti saints, Advaita Vedanta, Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, and thinkers such as Tolstoy, Ruskin, and Thoreau. At age 57, he declared himself to be Advaitist Hindu in his religious persuasion, but added that he supported Dvaitist viewpoints and religious pluralism. Gandhi was influenced by his devout Vaishnava Hindu mother, the regional Hindu temples and saint tradition which coexisted with Jain tradition in Gujarat. Historian R.B. Fribb states that Gandhi's thought evolved over time, with his early ideas becoming the core or scaffolding for his mature philosophy. He committed himself early to truthfulness, temperance, chastity, and vegetarianism. Gandhi's London lifestyle incorporated the values he had grown up with. When he returned to India in 1891, his outlook was parochial and he could not make a living as a lawyer. This challenged his belief that practicality and morality necessarily coincided. By moving in 1893 to South Africa, he found a solution to this problem and developed the central concepts of his mature philosophy. According to Bhikkhu Parekh, 3 books that influenced Gandhi most in South Africa were William Salter's Ethical Religion, Henry David Thoreau's On the Duty of Civil Disobedience, and Leo Tolstoy's The Kingdom of God is Within You. The art critic and critic of political economy John Ruskin inspired his decision to live an austere life on a commune. At first on the Phoenix farm in Natal and then on the Tolstoy farm just outside Johannesburg, South Africa. The most profound influence on Gandhi were those from Hinduism, Christianity, and Jainism, states Parekh, with his thoughts in harmony with the classical Indian traditions, especially the Advaita or monistic tradition. According to Indira Kaur and others, Gandhi was influenced by Vaishnavism, Jainism, and Advaita Vedanta. Balkrishna Gokhale states that Gandhi was influenced by Hinduism and Jainism, and his studies of Sermon on the Mount of Christianity, Ruskin, and Tolstoy. Additional theories of possible influences on Gandhi have been proposed. For example, in 1935, Anatuthai stated that Gandhi was influenced by the reforms and teachings of the Swaminarayan tradition of Hinduism. According to Raymond Williams, Tuthai may have overlooked the influence of the Jain community. and adds close parallels do exist in programs of social reform in the Swaminarayan tradition and those of Gandhi, based on nonviolence, truth-telling, cleanliness, temperance, and upliftment of the masses. Historian Howard states the culture of Gujarat influenced Gandhi and his methods. Along with the book mentioned above, in 1908 Leo Tolstoy wrote a letter to a Hindu, which said that only by using love as a weapon through passive resistance could the Indian people overthrow colonial rule. In 1909, Gandhi wrote to Tolstoy seeking advice and permission to republish a letter to a Hindu in Gujarati. Tolstoy responded, and the two continued a correspondence until Tolstoy's death in 1910. The letters concerned practical and theological applications of nonviolence. Gandhi saw himself a disciple of Tolstoy, for they agreed regarding opposition to state authority and colonialism. Both hated violence and preached non-resistance. However, they differed sharply on political strategy. Gandhi called for political involvement. He was a nationalist and was prepared to use nonviolent force. He was also willing to compromise. It was at Tolstoy Farm where Gandhi and Herman Kallenbach systematically trained their disciples in the philosophy of nonviolence. Gandhi credited Srimad Rajchandra, a poet and Jain philosopher, as his influential counselor. In Modern Review, June 1930, Gandhi wrote about their first encounter in 1891 at Dr. P.J. Mehta's residence in Bombay. He was introduced to Srimad by Dr. Pranjavan Mehta. Gandhi exchanged letters with Rajchandra when he was in South Africa, referring to him as Kavi. In 1930, Gandhi wrote, "Such was the man who captivated my heart in religious matters as no other man ever has till now. I have said elsewhere that in molding my inner life Tolstoy and Ruskin vied with Kavi. But Kavi's influence was undoubtedly deeper, if only because I had come in closest personal touch with him." Gandhi, in his autobiography, called Rajchandra his guide and helper and his refuge in moments of spiritual crisis. He had advised Gandhi to be patient and to study Hinduism deeply. During his stay in South Africa, along with scriptures and philosophical texts of Hinduism and other Indian religions, Gandhi read translated texts of Christianity such as the Bible and Islam such as the Quran. A Quaker mission in South Africa attempted to convert him to Christianity. Gandhi joined them in their prayers and debated Christian theology with them, but refused conversion, stating he did not accept the theology therein or that Christ was the only Son of God. His comparative studies of religions and interaction with scholars led him to respect all religions, as well as become concerned about imperfections in all of them and frequent misinterpretations. Gandhi grew fond of Hinduism and referred to the Bhagavad Gita as his spiritual dictionary and greatest single influence on his life. Later, Gandhi translated the Gita into Gujarati in 1930. Gandhi was acquainted with Sufi Islam's Kishti order during his stay in South Africa. He attended Konka gatherings there at Riverside. According to Margaret Chatterjee, Gandhi, as a Vaishnava Hindu, shared values such as humility, devotion, and brotherhood for the poor that is also found in Sufism. Winston Churchill also compared Gandhi to a Sufi fakir. Gandhi participated in forming the Indian Ambulance Corps in the South African War against the Boers on the British side in 1899. Both the Dutch settlers, called Boers, and the Imperial British at that time discriminated against the colored races they considered as inferior. And Gandhi later wrote about his conflicted beliefs during the Boer War. He stated that when the war was declared, my personal sympathies were all with the Boers, but my loyalty to the British rule drove me to participation with the British in that war. I felt that, if I demanded rights as a British citizen, it was also my duty, as such, to participate in the defense of the British Empire. So I collected together as many comrades as possible, and with very great difficulty got their services accepted as an ambulance corps. During World War I, nearing the age of 50, Gandhi supported the British and its allied forces by recruiting Indians to join the British Army, expanding the Indian contingent from about 100,000 to over 1.1 million. He encouraged Indian people to fight on one side of the war in Europe and Africa at the cost of their lives. Pacifists criticized and questioned Gandhi, who defended these practices by stating, according to Sankar Ghose, "It would be madness for me to sever my connection with the society to which I belong." According to Keith Robbins, the recruitment effort was in part motivated by the British promise to reciprocate the help with Swaraj to Indians after the end of World War I. After the war, the British government offered minor reforms instead, which disappointed Gandhi. He launched his Satyagraha movement in 1919. In parallel, Gandhi's fellowmen became skeptical of his pacifist ideas and were inspired by the ideas of nationalism and anti-imperialism. In a 1920 essay, After the World War I, Gandhi wrote, "Where there is only a choice between cowardice and violence, I would advise violence." Rahul Sagar interprets Gandhi's efforts to recruit for the British military during the war as Gandhi's belief that, At that time, it would demonstrate that Indians were willing to fight. Further, it would also show the British that his fellow Indians were their subjects by choice rather than out of cowardice. In 1922, Gandhi wrote that abstinence from violence is effective and true forgiveness only when one has the power to punish, not when one decides not to do anything because one is helpless. After World War II engulfed Britain, Gandhi actively campaigned to oppose any help to the British war effort and any Indian participation in the war. According to Arthur Herman, Gandhi believed that his campaign would strike a blow to imperialism. Gandhi's position was not supported by many Indian leaders, and his campaign against the British war effort was a failure. The Hindu leader, Tej Bahadur Sapru, declared in 1941, states Herman, a good many Congress leaders are fed up with the barren program of the Mahatma. Over 2.5 million Indians ignored Gandhi, volunteered and joined on the British side. They fought and died as a part of the Allied forces in Europe, North Africa and various fronts of the World War II. Gandhi dedicated his life to discovering and pursuing truth, or satya, and called his movement satyagraha, which means appeal to, insistence on, or reliance on the truth. The first formulation of the satyagraha as a political movement and principle occurred in 1920, which he tabled as resolution on non-cooperation in September that year before a session of the Indian Congress. It was the satyagraha formulation and step, states Dennis Dalton, that deeply resonated with beliefs and culture of his people, embedded him into the popular consciousness, transforming him quickly into Mahatma. Gandhi based satyagraha on the Vedantic ideal of self-realization, ahimsa, vegetarianism, and universal love. William Borman states that the key to his satyagraha is rooted in the Hindu Upanishadic texts. According to Indira Kar, Gandhi's ideas on ahimsa and satyagraha were founded on the philosophical foundations of Advaita Vedanta. Bruce Watson states that some of these ideas are found not only in traditions within Hinduism, but also in Jainism or Buddhism, particularly those about non-violence, vegetarianism, and universal love. But Gandhi's synthesis was to politicize these ideas. Gandhi's concept of satya as a civil movement, states Glyn Richards, are best understood in the context of the Hindu terminology of dharma and artha. Gandhi stated that the most important battle to fight was overcoming his own demons, fears, and insecurities. Gandhi summarized his beliefs first when he said God is truth. He would later change this statement to truth is God. Thus, Satya in Gandhi's philosophy is God. Gandhi, states Richards, described the term God not as a separate power, but as the being of the Advaita Vedanta tradition, a non-dual universal that pervades in all things, in each person and all life. According to Nicholas Gier, this to Gandhi meant the unity of God and humans, that all beings have the same one soul and therefore equality, that Atman exists and is same as everything in the universe. Ahimsa is the very nature of this Atman. The essence of satyagraha is soul force as a political means, refusing to use brute force against the oppressor, seeking to eliminate antagonisms between the oppressor and the oppressed, aiming to transform or purify the oppressor. It is not an action but determined passive resistance and non-cooperation where, states Arthur Herman, love conquers hate. The euphemism sometimes used for satyagraha is that it is a silent force or a soul force. It arms the individual with moral power rather than physical power. Satyagraha is also termed a universal force, as it essentially makes no distinction between kinsmen and strangers, young and old, man and woman, friend and foe. Gandhi wrote, "There must be no impatience, no barbarity, no insolence, no undue pressure. If we want to cultivate a true spirit of democracy, we cannot afford to be intolerant. Intolerance betrays one of faith in one's cause. Civil disobedience and non-cooperation as practiced under satyagraha are based on the law of suffering, a doctrine that the endurance of suffering is a means to an end. This end usually implies a moral upliftment or progress of an individual or society. Therefore, non-cooperation in satyagraha is in fact a means to secure the cooperation of the opponent consistently with truth and justice." While Gandhi's idea of satyagraha as a political means attracted a widespread following among Indians, the support was not universal. For example, Muslim leaders such as Jinnah opposed the satyagraha idea, accused Gandhi to be reviving Hinduism through political activism, and began effort to counter Gandhi with Muslim nationalism and a demand for Muslim homeland. The untouchability leader Ambedkar, in June 1945, after his decision to convert to Buddhism and a key architect of the constitution of modern India, dismissed Gandhi's ideas as loved by blind Hindu devotees, primitive, influenced by spurious brew of Tolstoy and Ruskin, and there is always some simpleton to preach them. Winston Churchill caricatured Gandhi as a cunning huckster seeking selfish gain, an aspiring dictator, and an atavistic spokesman of a pagan Hinduism. Churchill stated that the civil disobedience movement spectacle of Gandhi only increased the danger to which white people there are exposed. Although Gandhi was not the originator of the principle of nonviolence, he was the first to apply it in the political field on a large scale. The concept of nonviolence has a long history in Indian religious thought and is considered the highest dharma, the precept to be observed towards all living beings, at all times, in all respects, in action, words, and thought. Gandhi explains his philosophy and ideas about ahimsa as a political means in his autobiography, The Story of My Experiments with Truth. Gandhi was criticized for refusing to protest the hanging of Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, Udham Singh, and Rajguru. He was accused of accepting a deal with the king's representative Irwin that released civil disobedience leaders from prison and accepted the death sentence against the highly popular revolutionary Bhagat Singh, who at his trial had replied, "Revolution is the inalienable right of mankind." However, congressmen who were votaries of non-violence defended Bhagat Singh and other revolutionary nationalists being tried in Lahore. Gandhi's views came under heavy criticism in Britain when it was under attack from Nazi Germany, and later when the Holocaust was revealed. He told the British people in 1940, "I would like you to lay down the arms you have as being useless for saving your humanity. You will invite Herr Hitler and Signor Mussolini to take what they want of the countries you call your possessions. If these gentlemen choose to occupy your homes, you will vacate them. If they do not give you free passage out, you will allow yourselves, man, woman, and child, to be slaughtered, but you will refuse to owe allegiance to them." George Orwell remarked that Gandhi's methods confronted an old-fashioned and rather shaky despotism which treated him in a fairly chivalrous way, not a totalitarian power, where political opponents simply disappear. In a post-war interview in 1946, he said, "Hitler killed 5 million Jews. It is the greatest crime of our time. But the Jews should have offered themselves to the butcher's knife. They should have thrown themselves into the sea from cliffs. It would have aroused the world and the people of Germany. As it is, they succumbed anyway in their millions." Gandhi believed this act of collective suicide, in response to the Holocaust, would have been heroism. Gandhi, as a politician, in practice, settled for less than complete non-violence. His method of non-violent satyagraha could easily attract masses, and it fitted in with the interests and sentiments of business groups, better-off people and dominant sections of peasantry, who did not want an uncontrolled and violent social revolution which could create losses for them. His doctrine of ahimsa lay at the core of unifying role played by the Gandhian Congress. But during Quit India movement, even many staunch Gandhians used violent means. Gandhi believed that Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism were traditions of Hinduism, with a shared history, rites, and ideas. At other times, he acknowledged that he knew little about Buddhism other than his reading of Edwin Arnold's book on it. Based on that book, he considered Buddhism to be a reform movement and the Buddha to be a Hindu. He stated he knew Jainism much more, and he credited Jains to have profoundly influenced him. Sikhism, to Gandhi, was an integral part of Hinduism in the form of another reform movement. Sikh and Buddhist leaders disagreed with Gandhi, a disagreement Gandhi respected as a difference of opinion. Gandhi had generally positive and empathetic views of Islam, and he extensively studied the Quran. He viewed Islam as a faith that proactively promoted peace, and felt that non-violence had a predominant place in the Quran. He also read the Islamic prophet Muhammad's biography, and argued that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement of the Prophet, the scrupulous regard for pledges, his intense devotion to his friends and followers, his intrepidity, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in God and in his own mission. Gandhi had a large Indian Muslim following, who he encouraged to join him in a mutual nonviolent jihad against the social oppression of their time. Prominent Muslim allies in his nonviolent resistance movement included Maulana Abul Kalam Azad and Abdul Ghaffar Khan. However, Gandhi's empathy towards Islam and his eager willingness to valorize peaceful Muslim social activists was viewed by many Hindus as an appeasement of Muslims and later became a leading cause for his assassination at the hands of intolerant Hindu extremists. While Gandhi expressed mostly positive views of Islam, he did occasionally criticize Muslims. He stated in 1925 that he did not criticize the teachings of the Quran, but he did criticize the interpreters of the Quran. Gandhi believed that numerous interpreters have interpreted it to fit their preconceived notions. He believed Muslims should welcome criticism of the Quran, because every true scripture only gains from criticism. Gandhi criticized Muslims who betray intolerance of criticism by a non-Muslim of anything related to Islam, such as the penalty of stoning to death under Islamic law. To Gandhi, Islam has nothing to fear from criticism even if it be unreasonable. He also believed there were material contradictions between Hinduism and Islam, and he criticized Muslims along with communists that were quick to resort to violence. One of the strategies Gandhi adopted was to work with Muslim leaders of pre-partition India to oppose the British imperialism in and outside the Indian subcontinent. After the World War I, in 1919-22, he won Muslim leadership support of Ali brothers by backing the Khilafat movement in favor of the Islamic Caliph and his historic Ottoman Caliphate, and opposing the secular Islam supporting Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. By 1924, Ataturk had ended the Caliphate, the Khilafat movement was over, and Muslim support for Gandhi had largely evaporated. In 1925, Gandhi gave another reason to why he got involved in the Khilafat movement and the Middle East affairs between Britain and the Ottoman Empire. Gandhi explained to his co-religionists that he sympathized and campaigned for the Islamic cause, not because he cared for the Sultan, but because I wanted to enlist the Muslims' sympathy in the matter of cow protection. According to the historian M. Niam Qureshi, like the then Indian Muslim leaders who had combined religion and politics, Gandhi too imported his religion into his political strategy during the Khilafat movement. In the 1940s, Gandhi pooled ideas with some Muslim leaders who sought religious harmony like him, and opposed the proposed partition of British India into India and Pakistan. For example, his close friend Baja Khan suggested that they should work towards opening Hindu temples for Muslim prayers and Islamic mosques for Hindu prayers to bring the two religious groups closer. Gandhi accepted this and began having Muslim prayers read in Hindu temples to play his part, but was unable to get Hindu prayers read in mosques. The Hindu nationalist groups objected and began confronting Gandhi for this one-sided practice. By shouting and demonstrating inside the Hindu temples in the last years of his life, Gandhi criticized as well as praised Christianity. He was critical of Christian missionary efforts in British India because they mixed medical or education assistance with demands that the beneficiary convert to Christianity. According to Gandhi, this was not true service but one driven by an ulterior motive of luring people into religious conversion and exploiting the economically or medically desperate. It did not lead to inner transformation or moral advance or to the Christian teaching of love, but was based on false one-sided criticisms of other religions. When Christian societies faced similar problems in South Africa and Europe, it led to the converted person hating his neighbors and other religions, and divided people rather than bringing them closer in compassion. According to Gandhi, no religious tradition could claim a monopoly over truth or salvation. Gandhi did not support laws to prohibit missionary activity, but demanded that Christians should first understand the message of Jesus, and then strive to live without stereotyping and misrepresenting other religions. According to Gandhi, the message of Jesus was not to humiliate and imperialistically rule over other people considering them inferior or second class or slaves, but that when the hungry are fed and peace comes to our individual and collective life, then Christ is born. Gandhi believed that his long acquaintance with Christianity had made him like it as well as find it imperfect. He asked Christians to stop humiliating his country and his people as heathens, idolaters, and other abusive language, and to change their negative views of India. He believed that Christians should introspect on the true meaning of religion and get a desire to study and learn from Indian religions in the spirit of universal brotherhood. According to Eric Sharp, a professor of religious studies, though Gandhi was born in a Hindu family and later became Hindu by conviction, many Christians in time thought of him as an exemplary Christian and even as a saint. Some colonial-era Christian preachers and faithfuls considered Gandhi as a saint. Biographers from France and Britain have drawn parallels between Gandhi and Christian saints. Recent scholars question these romantic biographies and state that Gandhi was neither a Christian figure nor mirrored a Christian saint. Gandhi's life is better viewed as exemplifying his belief in the convergence of various spiritualities of a Christian and a Hindu, states Michael de St. Charon. According to Kumaraswamy, Gandhi initially supported Arab demands with respect to Palestine. He justified this support by invoking Islam, stating that non-Muslims cannot acquire sovereign jurisdiction in Jazirat al-Arab. These arguments, states Kumaraswamy, were a part of his political strategy to win Muslim support during the Khilafat movement. In the post-Khilafat period, Gandhi neither negated Jewish demands nor did he use Islamic texts or history to support Muslim claims against Israel. Gandhi's silence after the Khilafat period may represent an evolution in his understanding of the conflicting religious claims over Palestine. According to Kumaraswamy, in 1938, Gandhi spoke in favor of Jewish claims, and in March 1946, he said to the member of British Parliament Sidney Silverman, "If the Arabs have a claim to Palestine, the Jews have a prior claim," a position very different from his earlier stance. Gandhi discussed the persecution of the Jews in Germany and the emigration of Jews from Europe to Palestine through his lens of satyagraha. In 1937, Gandhi discussed Zionism with his close Jewish friend Hermann Kallenbach. He said that Zionism was not the right answer to the problems faced by Jews and instead recommended satyagraha. Gandhi thought the Zionists in Palestine represented European imperialism and used violence to achieve their goals. He argued that the Jews should disclaim any intention of realizing their aspiration under the protection of arms and should rely wholly on the goodwill of Arabs. No exception can possibly be taken to the natural desire of the Jews to find a home in Palestine, but they must wait for its fulfillment till Arab opinion is ripe for it. In 1938, Gandhi stated that his sympathies are all with the Jews. I have known them intimately in South Africa. Some of them became lifelong companions. Philosopher Martin Buber was highly critical of Gandhi's approach and in 1939 wrote an open letter to him on the subject. Gandhi reiterated his stance that the Jews seek to convert the Arab heart and used satyagraha in confronting the Arabs in 1947. According to Simone Panter-Brick, Gandhi's political position on Jewish-Arab conflict evolved over the 1917,194 period, shifting from a support for the Arab position first and for the Jewish position in the 1940s. The idea of vegetarianism is deeply ingrained in Hindu Vaishnavism and Jain traditions in India, such as in his native Gujarat, where meat is considered as a form of food obtained by violence to animals. Gandhi's rationale for vegetarianism was largely along those found in Hindu and Jain texts. Gandhi believed that any form of food inescapably harms some form of living organism. What one should seek to understand and reduce the violence in what one consumes because there is essential unity of all life. Gandhi believed that some life forms are more capable of suffering, and non-violence to him meant not having the intent as well as active efforts to minimize hurt, injury or suffering to all life forms. Gandhi explored food sources that reduced violence to various life forms in the food chain. He believed that slaughtering animals is unnecessary, as other sources of foods are available. He also consulted with vegetarianism campaigners during his lifetime, such as with Henry Stevens Salt. Food to Gandhi was not only a source of sustaining one's body, but a source of his impact on other living beings, and one that affected his mind, character, and spiritual well-being. He avoided not only meat, but also eggs and milk. Gandhi wrote the book The Moral Basis of Vegetarianism and wrote for the London Vegetarian Society's publication. Beyond his religious beliefs, Gandhi stated another motivation for his experiments with diet. He attempted to find the most non-violent vegetarian meal that the poorest human could afford, taking meticulous notes on vegetables and fruits, and his observations with his own body and his ashram in Gujarat. He tried fresh and dry fruits, then just sun-dried fruits, before resuming his prior vegetarian diet on advice of his doctor and concerns of his friends. His experiments with food began in the 1890s and continued for several decades. For some of these experiments, Gandhi combined his own ideas with those found on diet in Indian yoga texts. He believed that each vegetarian should experiment with their diet because, in his studies at his ashram, he saw one man's food may be poison for another. Gandhi championed animal rights in general, other than making vegetarian choices. He actively campaigned against dissection studies and experimentation on live animals in the name of science and medical studies. He considered it a violence against animals, something that inflicted pain and suffering. He wrote, "Vivisection, in my opinion, is the blackest of all the blackest crimes that man is at present committing against God and his fair creation." Gandhi used fasting as a political device, often threatening suicide unless demands were met. Congress publicized the fasts as a political action that generated widespread sympathy. In response, the government tried to manipulate news coverage to minimize his challenge to the Raj. He fasted in 1932 to protest the voting scheme for separate political representation for Dalits. Gandhi did not want them segregated. The British government stopped the London press from showing photographs of his emaciated body because it would elicit sympathy. Gandhi's 1943 hunger strike took place during a 2-year prison term for the anti-colonial Quit India movement. The government called on nutritional experts to demystify his action, and again no photos were allowed. However, his final fast in 1948, after the end of British rule in India, his hunger strike was lauded by the British press and this time did include full-length photos. Alter states that Gandhi's fasting, vegetarianism, and diet was more than a political leverage. It was a part of his experiments with self-restraint and healthy living. He was profoundly skeptical of traditional Ayurveda, encouraging it to study the scientific method and adopt its progressive learning approach. Gandhi believed yoga offered health benefits. He believed that a healthy nutritional diet based on regional foods and hygiene were essential to good health. Recently, ICMR made Gandhi's health records public in a book, Gandhi and Health 150. These records indicate that despite being underweight at 46.7 kg, Gandhi was generally healthy. He avoided modern medication and experimented extensively with water and earth healing. While his cardio records show his heart was normal, there were several instances he suffered from ailments like malaria and was also operated on twice for piles and appendicitis. Despite health challenges, Gandhi was able to walk about 79,000 km in his lifetime, which comes to average of 18 km per day and is equivalent to walking around the Earth twice. Soon, Part 3.